Yeah, it's time for another Hearthstone card review, and today's an exciting one because we're talking about the return of Handlock. Yeah, look at Godfrey the Betrayer here, a new 4-mana 5/4 undead. Start of game, overdrawn cards return to your hand when you have space, and they cost one less. So sometimes, you know, with handlock decks, with really any deck these days in Hearthstone, with all the crazy card draw and card generation we have in this era, it can be a little tough when your hand gets too full. I mean, we just saw that with Vanessa, the Ringleader, the new card that just hit. Remember, that's a neutral card. You can play that in Warlock and just generate a million cards in hand. Now, cards that would be added to hand from board don't work for this, but then future cards that you drew because your hand was too full, they kind of go into this little stasis waiting area, a twisting nether, if you will, purgatory of some sort, right? And then as soon as you play cards from hand, you're going to find that card. Presumably, I guess you can stack up multiples and they will probably enter hand in order if I had to guess. I don't know exactly how it's going to work. And then they will also be discounted. So not only does this like protect you from overdrawing, which is great because we're going to see some additional handlock synergy stuff in this video, as you might have expected, but you also get a bonus. Not just protection, but an actual bonus. So all overdrawing some expensive cards means, hey, I actually get to cheat these out even faster. So rewarding you basically in kind of a variety of ways for having lots of card draw and for getting into those big hand states, which we're going to see plenty of support for already. And that makes me excited. And I think because this is a non-conditional start of game effect that just works, that's exactly what you want. Mana cheat, that's exactly what you want. So I think this card's going to be perfect. No, of course, you don't really want a 4-mana 5/4 in your deck, but it could be worse. You know, some of these kind of crazy effects, think of like the Bakus of old, where you get stuck with this giant 9-cost card or whatever it was. And now it's like, hey, a 4-mana 5/4 in the scheme of things, I can deal with that as a downside. Like sometimes you might even play this and be totally okay with it. But this start of game is just all upside, has a bonus built in, always works. That's really good news. And I think some handlock decks will definitely come together around that. Any deck that's just making a bunch of stuff could come together around this. Not every Warlock will run this. Obviously, some decks just don't get into a world where their hands would be full or would ever care about this kind of effect. So it's not an everywhere amazing, you know, class defining card, but deck defining enough to support and enable handlock's return. Yeah, I think that's absolutely a possibility here for Godfrey. I think it looks quite good in that context. So moving on to some of those support cards for handlock. This one's pretty sweet. The Unseen Atlas, which this almost reads like a legendary card to me, but it's actually a common with a name like the Unseen Atlas. Anyway, 10-mana spell, Shadow, draw 3 cards, and then that costs 1 less for each card in your hand. Now, under normal circumstances, this card would have kind of a weird little feedback loop where, you know, you would get it to 0 if you had a full hand, but then it wouldn't really be all that good because your hand would be full, right? You would play it, you'd have 1 spot remaining, and you'd burn 2 cards. Now, with Godfrey the Betrayer, right, suddenly a card like this makes way too much sense, and it's actually completely busted. When you get to 10 cards in hand, you get a 0-mana draw 3, which is just completely cracked. Like, that's obviously insane. Like we said, 2 of them will get held in stasis, I guess, for Godfrey. You know, they won't be drawn, they'll be overdrawn, which means you'll also be discounting 2 of the cards that you draw if you indeed play this on a full hand with Godfrey in your deck. So, like, are you kidding me? You draw 1 just naturally for now, and then you get 2 cards later. And remember, as soon as you play some cards out of hand, those are instantly going to be added to your hand. So even though it's kind of like delayed card draw, not necessarily, right? If you're playing out other cards, you're going to get those with discounts right off the bat. So this is just an incredible tool for a handlock deck. Like, exactly the sort of thing you want. Cost, discount, scaling with your hand size, that's perfect. Playing it at Godfrey's effect is perfect. I mean, I just love this, right? This is super powerful draw engine for a deck that obviously wants full hands. You know, I guess there is some, like, consideration, you know, when this is bad, it's really bad, because if you do end up in a world somehow where your hand is just way too small, I don't think that's a huge risk for those. You know, usually you have lots of ways to get a full hand, but if you only had like 4 cards in hand or something and you top decked this, you'd be kind of sad at that point, right? Because they'd be like, oh, I don't want to spend 6 mana, draw 3. So, you know, it is a card that's insane when it's insane and really bad when it's really bad. So I guess you'll have to construct the deck with enough card draw, enough pieces that you're not totally reliant on this being the only thing that fills your hand. And like, of course, you have life tap. Worst case scenario, I guess, to refill. But, you know, it does mean you have to really lean into card draw in a variety of ways. But I think that's fine. I actually don't think that's that big of a risk or downside. I think you'll be able to mitigate that no problem. And this will just be this incredible result so very often where you're playing this basically for 0, 1 mana, even 2 mana. You're probably not mad about your Unseen Atlas. You might not get the Godfrey's upside, but you know, still 2 mana, draw 3 is gonna feel fine because you're gonna have other cards that also want to be enabled by having a larger hand, which we're about to see very shortly. In fact, right now, this is the Caged Cranium, a 3 mana 3/1 undead with Taunt and Battle Cry. Gain +1 health for each card in your hand. So this is basically a Twilight Drake of old, much like OG Handlock. I love that we're just getting callbacks to old Handlock. Like, that is actually so sick. But it's way better than old school Twilight Drake, right? It's not only a mana cheaper, it also has Taunt. I guess it lost an attack, but I think that's worth it for a much cheaper card here. So, you know, I think this won't necessarily be huge on turn 3, because one of the great things about Twilight Drake is, you know, it does give you an extra turn to get your hand even bigger. Whereas, you know, it might be hard to get your hand big enough by turn 3, because you also won't have enough to like significantly discount our previous card. So this is not necessarily, I think, a turn 3 card, although sometimes you might be okay playing this on turn 3 if you just need to have like a 3/4, 3/5, whatever it'd be at that stage, depending on coin and stuff. Maybe bigger even. With life tap, you know, could get even bigger. I think there'll be moments that's fine against an aggro deck. I think there'll be other moments you greed this a little bit. Maybe it comes down on turn 4, turn 5, alongside another card, Mortal Coil plus Cranium on 4, that sort of thing, right? Whatever it is you're weaving in. But the cool thing is, like, it's going to have enough health that it's still meaningful at those stages, because, you know, sometimes this is going to have 8, 9 health, and that's still enough in the mid game to really slow down and disrupt your opponent as you're presumably moving into a late game win condition. Perhaps Rafam is one that goes well with this Handlock package, where you just, you know, you're trying to draw a lot of cards to find your Rafams anyway. Now you have defensive tools like the Caged Cranium to help you buy time to play out all those Rafams. Rafams themselves can also be good at that. So I do see this being like a pretty cool support package. I don't know for sure that the Handlock package will be enough to be good on its own. We're gonna see another card here with a location that kind of got leaked a little early. Not by me, actually. Zeddy leaked it first. I came along later and leaked it in like 2 frames of my video accidentally. It's because Blizzard sent us that card as an announced card, so Zeddy naturally put it in his video. But then I came along like 3 hours later because I was late that day. I was like, hey, this card's not anywhere except in Zeddy's video. Did it really not get revealed? So I double checked and got it. But anyway, that's a fun story about how things work behind the scenes. Anyway, you know, I don't know if Handlock can get there on its own. Like, I don't think playing like 3/8 or whatever is going to do it. I don't think the location enough is going to do it. I think it will be kind of a complementary package for other decks that are like control decks or have some kind of win condition like Rafam built in. I mean, it could also be Herald as your win condition too, just kind of grinding out the opponent on stuff. You could have an egg in there still too, right? And this would still be a nice complementary package. So what I'm getting at is, like, I think this card looks pretty good. Great Handlock synergy piece. Maybe not its own deck, but just like a good core of cards. So next up is that location, the Spire of Solitude, 5 mana, 2 durability. This one summons a demon with stats equal to your hand size. It attacks a random enemy minion. So play this down on turn 5. I would say, like, usually that means you'd have, like, you know, max 9/9, but actually remember, as you're playing cards out, sometimes Godfrey will refill your hand if you previously overdrew. May not happen that reliably by turn 5, but frankly could with the big card draw in particular. So you might actually just get 10-10s off of this in some cases as early as turn 5. And then beyond that, I would say, oh, if it was just summon a 10-10, I'd be nervous that turn 5 is just a hair late for that. You know, we kind of saw that old Mountain Giant Lion on turn 4 in the past. But the fact that it does get to attack a random enemy minion does mean it has some immediacy. It would be way better if it had Rush, right? Rush giving you the control to dictate where that attack goes would be even higher upside. But I think, you know, sometimes this will just have a lone target anyway, where you're like, okay, sure, this is fine. Other times, you know, if it hits a 3-3 and it leaves a 4-4, you're still going to be happy that you've kind of done something and not, you know, just sat there totally dead to your opponent's board. So I think it's nice that it has at least that. Rush, man, that'd be killer. But and then of course you get 2 durability on this, so you get to do it again basically on turn 7, summon another like 10-10 or whatever, which means in total you kind of get 5 mana, 20 in stats here off your Spire of Solitude, again, both of which can attack. Which, you know, again, wish it had Rush. Taunt also would be cool to give this a little bit more of that defensive edge, but I do like that this is that sort of threat development that Handlock also utilized well. So between this and the other guy, you're just going to put a lot of stats into play, a lot of health into play, a lot of attack into play with this one potentially too, which can just sort of overwhelm the opponent. Even if it's not winning right away, it kind of puts them on the back foot. It swings the game in a different direction. Suddenly they're worried about like, oh God, these 10-10s are going to kill me before long. I got to be careful, right? So having that little bit of shift of focus, turning the corner in the mid game can work well for these decks. The question becomes for me almost like, if I'm using this Handlock package for card draw and defense and control in a Rafam shell, do I maybe cut the Spire of Solitude? Like, is that more of its own using Handlock as an aggro deck, which is a funny way to think about it, but I always kind of maintained Handlock was probably really more like a mid-range deck in a way, but like the point of Handlock often was to just overwhelm you with stats and kill you. Probably a mid-range deck's what you'd say, but anyway, the takeaway is like, will you be able to build a Handlock just for stats sake, or will it have to be that complementary package? If it's just about the complementary package that's trying to push to the late game, wouldn't be totally shocked if this got cut. That said, it's still just 10-10s. They do get to clear something right away, so it does have a little bit of that defensive utility, and that defensive utility is probably enough to make it worth it just because like the stats are so big, right? It's enough of a shift that it's probably worth it. I would just say for me, this might be the first cut if you were going to cut one of these Handlock cards in a Rafam deck. I think it's still good enough though. Now our final Warlock card here is Shadow Rounds, a new 2-mana shadow spell. This one deals 2 damage to an enemy minion, and then if it dies, cast this on another random enemy minion. So this is kind of like a Defile adjacent sort of card here. Actually kind of like old Godfrey as well. But I actually think this one's way worse because this is only hitting a singular minion. And then each hit, right? And then the second hit in particular is not targeted. It's random, right? So like this chain is very easy to break in essence. Unlike say Defile or the old Godfrey, when they were hitting multiple things, like hitting everything on board, actually including your own stuff as well with Defile, I think it was a lot easier to create some of those chain reaction scenarios where you could kind of make sure lots of stuff died, because hitting every target along the way with each step increased the likelihood that that next one was going to lead to another death to give you the next step or whatever. So this one, I'm a little less convinced that's going to happen, because you might target this, because the first one is targeted, right? Hit a 2-2 or whatever. Then it might just go over to a 4-4 or 3-3 and instantly like, oh crap, my chain is dead, right? So how much is it worth it, like, you know, against Treants specifically? Yeah, sure. If you have a board of Treants, like amazing, whatever, right? That's great. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of board states where this just kind of whiffs early and you feel bad. And I don't know if it's worth it for just like 1 or 2 hits for a removal spell. That might not be worth the slot. So I don't know, something about this just looks a little awkward to me. I have kind of underrated some of these like weird little early game removal spells that have kind of strange math or condition in the past. So there's this part of me that's like, am I doing it again? Am I underrating this again? But I still just feel like it's going to be clunky. Health totals are a lot bigger these days early on, and I think lining up the math on this And the fact that you don't actually even really get to line it up are two of the problems for shadow rounds, and I think that's really what's going to hold this one back. So all that said, let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Godfrey the Betrayer is a 4-star card. Unseen Atlas is a 4-star card. Caged Cranium is a 4-star card. Fire of Solitude is a 3-star card. Shadow Rounds is a 2-star card. And yeah, there you go, folks. That's pretty cool, man. Love to see Godfrey back. Really love to see Handlock back. One of my most beloved decks of old. Always happy to revisit that. Going to be super fun to try to make all this work. And perfect for me, by the way, because I am someone who constantly overdraws cards because I can't manage my hand size very well. I got giant hands. How big my hands are. It's not a trick of the camera at all. They're giant. The biggest hands, the strongest, meatiest hands. This is great for me. I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's like, oh yeah, I meant to do that, guys. That's just more discounts. It was all part of the plan all along. I just thought I was playing Godfrey the Betrayer. So anyway, share your thoughts on these cards down below as always. Let me know if you're also hyped for some Warlock action. Thanks much for watching, and until next time, game on.